Toronto Maple Leafs signed Calle Järnkrok to a 4-year contract and maybe a little bit of tampering. Let's talk about it. The NHL season might be over, but the summer is piping hot. Canadian football, PGA, tennis, F1, the Blue Jays. Please figure it out, I'm begging you. All the action starts at Sports Interaction, Canada's sportsbook. Before the action, live in play are one of our many prop bets. Doing it right since 1997, Sports Interaction makes it easy to deposit, play, and cash out. Join now and see all sports betting has to offer. Head to sportsinteraction.com/SDPN. That's sportsinteraction.com/SDPN. It's 18 plus. Please play responsibly. So here's the news. The Leafs sign Calle Järnkrok to a 4-year deal, $2.1 million per year. Now it's funny, I feel like I was just on this channel yesterday telling you that the Leafs basically have no cap space at all. In fact, what I think I told you is the Leafs have just over a hair above $2 million left in cap space, with still Pierre Engvall and Rasmus Sandin to sign. Which, just for reference, depending on term for either player, I would expect to cost at least $4 or $5 million a year against the cap. And the number I told you was just a hair over $2 million. It was actually about $2.06 million. Meaning Calle Järnkrok just about perfectly takes that up and then some. But a reminder that the Leafs and every team in the NHL is allowed to go over the salary cap in the summer by 10%. They just have to be cap compliant by the time the season begins. And right now, they're super not cap compliant, and they're going to be even less cap compliant when they sign Engvall and Sandin, but they have 2 months to figure it out. But we'll get to that in a minute. What about Calle Järnkrok? Well, it's kind of interesting, because I had heard rumblings the Leafs were looking at another center. And you might look at that and go, okay, well, they have Matthews, they have Tavares. Is he getting moved to the wing? David Kampf, is he getting moved down to the fourth line? That doesn't make any sense. They just got Adam Gaudette. Is he going to be on the team? Is he going to be on the Marlies? Most good teams have more than 4 centers. In fact, the Leafs have more than 4 centers because Alexander Kerfoot could probably be a full-time center on a lot of teams. Calle Järnkrok might be a full-time center on a lot of teams, but he's one of those guys who can sort of play up the middle and play on the wing. Early projections that I saw had him on the wing of David Kampf, and who knows, probably Engvall. And as a shutdown line, I could get behind Engvall, Kampf, and Järnkrok. So what is he? According to Dom Luszczyszyn's model, Calle Järnkrok he's pretty good at most things. He's not really bad at anything. He's not the greatest on offense, and he's a little bit more defensive minded. Sounds like a third liner to me. Now, he's 30 years old, and he signed a 4-year deal. I gotta say, I'm surprised by that. Like, that number for Järnkrok isn't bad. I'm just a little worried about the term. But he's played 574 career games, and 75 in the playoffs. His most notable playoff when the Nashville Predators went to the Stanley Cup Final in 2017. He put up 7 points in 21 games and took just 1 penalty. And that's actually been kind of a theme with some of Kyle Dubas's signings over the years. He's not afraid to get guys like Wayne Simmons and tough guys who mix it up, but he doesn't like guys who take a lot of penalties. Because remember, I told you the dude's played 574 career NHL games. He's eclipsed 20 penalty minutes in a season once. He had 25 penalty minutes in 81 games. What a goon. Last year, in 66 games, he had just 6 penalty minutes total. And this is pretty important because I imagine he's going to be on the Leafs penalty kill, probably playing with David Kampf and Pierre Engvall. All of those guys on that line, if that is a line, are going to be on the penalty kill. And they're going to have to make up for the lack of Ondrej Kase and, most importantly, Ilya Mikheyev by committee on the penalty kill. The most penalty minutes he's ever had in a single playoff run is 4, and last year in 12 games with the Flames, he had none. And I think I mentioned this on the podcast a few months ago when the Flames picked him up from the Seattle Kraken heading into the playoffs. The dude is one of the most ridiculously consistent scorers in the NHL. Not that he does it a lot, because he doesn't do it a lot, but you know what to expect from him production-wise every single season. Goals in a season for the last 7 seasons. 16, 15, 16, 10, 15, 13, 12, and remember that 2 of those seasons were shortened. Points over the last 7 seasons, 30, 31, 35, 26, 34, 28, 26. Every single season, provided he's healthy, he's money in the bank for 35 points. Again, you don't really get him for his offense, but it's nice that it's there. The term is somewhat of a risk, but at 2.1 mil per, it's not the biggest risk. And 3 days into free agency, there weren't a ton of players available with his experience and the quality of the player, frankly, who were going to sign for less than that. In fact, I saw the dollar amount before I saw the name. I saw the Leafs signed a forward to over $2 million. I'm like, What forward out there is worth over $2 million right now? There's not a lot left, Nas. By the way, we'd like to get on with our summer, Nas! So Dubas adds another Swede. The Leafs have a lot of Swedes throughout their history and presently, and he's a Dubas guy. From Sam Turpak, familiarity. Järnkrok was Dubas's client when he was an agent. That's a great deal, man. Yes, it is a great deal, man, but Dubas loves his guys. Järnkrok played for Brynäs in Sweden, and I'm going to call them Bru St. Marie from now on. Now, it should be mentioned that last year with the Seattle Kraken, there were some struggles there. He did score a little bit more than usual. And if you look at his tenure with the Flames last year, he had 4 assists in 17 games. It's a huge slump for him, and it's an outlier in his career because, like I mentioned, he's a really consistent producer. I mean, last year was a weird year in Calle Järnkrok's career. He played with an expansion franchise and then was flipped to a contender mid-season. Meanwhile, he had been with the Preds his entire career before that. Dude played in Nashville for 8 seasons. I wonder where he learned how to be a defensive forward. And I'm sure some of you will look at Järnkrok and be like, well, he didn't help the Flames much in the playoffs. No one helped the Flames much in the playoffs when they played Edmonton. They looked bad in a game where they scored 9 goals and then lost 4 straight. It wasn't great. Feels like that might not be one third-liner's fault. Järnkrok being a right-handed center who can also play on the wing is relevant because, like I said, Leafs are about to be well over the cap. It sure seems like Alexander Kerfoot's days in Toronto are numbered. He's a ridiculously versatile player. He can play center, he can play the wing, he can play power play, he can play penalty kill. I think he's a better winger than a center and a better penalty killer than a power play guy, but he can do it all. Take penalties in an elimination game. We're not gonna, it shouldn't have been a penalty! I'm bitter. Kerfoot, despite his $3.5 million cap hit this season, only has $750,000 remaining to be paid. He's a ridiculously appealing player in a trade. That's the guy. Like, that's who's gonna go, almost for sure. Now, assuming Järnkrok plays the right wing to David Kampf, that's gonna leave a vacuum on the left wing, because Kerfoot was the second-line winger, and Mikheyev was mostly the third-line left winger. So let's assume Michael Bunting keeps his spot on the top line. That makes sense. Leafs could go out and get another guy. I don't know if they can afford it, unless they have more than one trade up their sleeve. I think Nick Robertson taking a step here is going to be real big for the Toronto Maple Leafs. They need it. Maybe even a guy like Alex Steeves, who was great with the Marlies last year, can play the middle, can play the wing. So while the left wing is a little concerning, you look up the middle, Matthews, Tavares, Kampf, it's ridiculous strong. The right wing, Marner, Nylander, and now Järnkrok, ridiculously strong. I'd call that fine. Now it's more about getting decent value for Kerfoot. I mean, Connor Brown, similar cap hit, just went for a second-round pick. Second-round pick doesn't help you win this year, but maybe at the deadline you flip it for someone who can. The exciting thing for me is they're obviously not done. Now, for those of you screaming, what about Justin Hall? Like I said last video, I know you don't love him. Right-hand defenseman, man. They're hard to get. And he does do a lot of things well for all his warts. And unless you want Jordy Ben to be the full-time guy on the right, I don't know. At the end of the day, Järnkrok is a good player on a good deal. That's good. It helps the Leafs win. Now, tampering. This was lifted from the last 32 Thoughts episode of the season. It's up right now on Spotify. Friedman on 32 Thoughts podcast. I think we're going to see some tampering accusations. What I'm curious about is, does this become anything actionable? Does the league go after this? I got told on Wednesday night after I got done work, look out, there's going to be accusations here. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say the Leafs are involved. The Leafs are going to be the ones doing the accusing, because Jack Campbell going to Edmonton was a done deal for like 2 weeks. Jack Campbell going to Edmonton for 5 years was a done deal for at least a week. And Jack Campbell getting $5 million per year for those 5 years was a done deal. We all knew. Well, how do we know? That's weird that we all knew, because free agency doesn't open until noon on the day that free agency happens, which this year was July 13th. Now, wait a sec. I thought there was like a week-long period or a few days where teams and players who were about to become UFAs, they could talk. You're right. There was. They got rid of it. I know. Yeah, no, they got rid of it. Which means if you speak to an unrestricted free agent on another team before unrestricted free agency opens, guess what? You're tampering. And it's been said many times, many ways. Everyone tampers. There's a lot of little tampering going on. GM's going, hey, how you doing? How's your golf game? You want to come play for my team? I'll give you a lot of money. So why this year are there going to be accusations? I think about it kind of like this. You ever been driving? You ever notice those signs at the side of the road that tell you how fast to go? Or rather, how slow to go? You're not allowed to go above that speed, and if you do go above that speed, you're speeding! And that is against the law. You're not allowed to do that. It's against the rules. But the funny thing, people speed. You see people speed every day. But just because people speed every single day doesn't mean that speeding is not breaking the rules. Because I don't know if you've noticed this, if you speed when you drive, sometimes you get pulled over for speeding. And the argument, oh, come on, everyone's speeding, doesn't work. Because sometimes you might get away with a little bit of speeding. But if you're really speeding, you're gonna get pulled over. Because you didn't just break the rules, you broke the rules. You really broke them. If they are talking about the Edmonton Oilers and Jack Campbell, I think that's kind of what they're talking about here. You call a guy's agent, maybe, and you loosely talk about like schools nearby and like what the team serves for dinner. You talk about that sort of stuff like 24, maybe even you push it 48 hours before free agency. That sort of thing I think happens all the time, and basically every team does it. Meanwhile, we knew Jack Campbell was going to be an Edmonton Oiler in like June. That's not driving 65 kilometers an hour in a 60, that is doing Mach 3 in a 60. Allegedly. Of course, all of it alleged. I'll be interested to see how that story evolves, if it evolves. If I was a betting man, I would say, I don't think anything's gonna happen. So, what do you think is gonna happen? And what do you think of the Calle Järnkrok signing? Leave a comment in the comment box down below, but for now, that is it for this one. Thank you very much for watching. Click like if you like this video. Click subscribe if you really liked it. Tell all your friends. Calle Järnkrok is a Leaf. And don't speed. All right? Don't.